Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar Weekly Discussion topic video. This is the second one of these this week because I want to make up for the fact that I didn't have one last week. I was just really busy last week, I didn't get a chance to do this Avatar video. So I'll do a second one this week. And the topic I'm doing is bending. This will actually be a series of discussion topic videos. Someone asked that I do one focusing just on the bending of each element, and so this first one is going to be a general discussion on bending and like what is bending and stuff like that, and I'll also cover the first element, which I've chosen Earth as the first element I'm going to talk about. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. The order that I'll do them in will be, obviously I'll cover general bending and earth in this one. Next time round will be water bending, then fire, then air bending, and I'll probably cover a little bit about energy bending in the air bending video. So yeah, that'll be the next couple of discussion topic videos. But yeah, let's get into bending overall. And I suppose the question is, what is bending? It is the most unique thing, I think, about Avatar as a whole. Like, without bending being in the show, it's like, okay, it's this cool kind of Asian-inspired traditional show, really, really good character development in the spirit world and stuff like that. But it's the bending that I think is the thing that makes people go like, wow, that's a really cool idea. People bending the elements, and especially how they approach it with like each element being based on like a specific martial art, and make the fight really cool. But I more mean, I suppose, what is bending in the sense of like in universe, what makes some people be able to bend and some people not. So, as I always seem to mention in these videos, the line turtles. And the line turtles are responsible for giving humans the ability to bend. Each line turtle, in addition to being an energy bender, also seems to have the power of one of the elements. So there are fire line turtles, there are earth line turtles, air line turtles, water line turtles, and on the backs, during Wan's time, all humans lived on the backs of line turtles to protect them from spirits. And so when the Avatar came around, and at little times before that, the line turtles initially lent humans the ability to bend to protect themselves against spirits. But then when Wan became the Avatar and the era of the Avatar started, the line turtles decided that their era of protecting humans was over. And so seemingly what happened was that they basically told the people living on their backs, we're going away now, we will give you bending if you want it to keep before we go. And so that's why humans have bending to this day, basically. And as for the science behind, like, how does bending work? Like, what allows a bender to bend? What is unique to a bender that a non-bender doesn't have that allows them to bend? That involves talking about the chi paths of the body and chi in general. So obviously chi is a kind of real world concept that some cultures believe in, and some kind of forms of less scientific medicine involve this. And it's basically this idea that there is an energy structure to the body, effectively sort of like a kind of blood, what am I starting to say? Like a blood vessel network throughout the body, but for energy, like inner energy called chi. So in Avatar, the way to describe this is that in everyone there is a chi path throughout their body, and this is where their inner energy flows. And this somewhat relates, obviously, the food they eat, in addition to giving them energy to move, physical energy, it also gives them this chi energy as well. Hence why when people overuse their bending, they get tired because they're using up that energy as well, but they're using their chi in this case. Now, everyone has chi, even non-benders. It is just that benders have the ability to manipulate their chi. Now, I suppose going further in on the chi paths, it is, the best way to describe it is that look at the tattoos on an airbender. They basically follow the chi path throughout the body. It's effectively an outline of the body. It goes up the arms, down the legs, up the back, and up and around the head to the forehead. And that's effectively it. When you go into the chakra points, you cover a little bit more. as we'll get into. But it's basically just this network around the body where the chi flows, and it basically forms and I suppose comes back to and is used in these various pools of chakra, pools where the energy can flow through. There are 7 chakras. There is the earth chakra, the water chakra, the fire chakra, the air chakra, the sound chakra, light chakra, and thought chakra. Now, I suppose in most people, these are, to some extent used or bypassed, but if you really specifically open them, you obviously get a ton of like chi energy and stuff like that, but it seems to be really, really only worth opening all of them for the avatar to assist the flow of energy while using the avatar state more effectively, and able to activate that, manipulating all of the chi around your chakra network. But notice the names of the first 4 of those chakras: earth, water, fire, air chakra. Now this, to some extent, we don't have the full explanation, but it to some extent explains, I suppose, why some people can bend an element and some people can't. I suppose the idea being that when the line turtle touches you and grants you the ability of, say, earthbending, what happens is that he kind of uses energy bending to alter your earth chakra to where that becomes like your prime chakra thing, and that to some extent affects how your chi can interact with earth, because your earth chakra is now activated. An avatar obviously has all 4 of them activated, hence why they can use all 4 elements, but that I think is definitely something not a lot of people seem to talk about. So it's important to note that there is a chakra pool point for each of the elements. Now, I'll get into talking about the earth one a little bit later on when I get into the discussion on earthbending. But for now, we're still focused on establishing what bending is and how it works. So that seems to be a general idea of it. Chi flows around the body through the chi paths and builds up in these various pools. Some people have some of these pools activated, whether it be through personal events in their lives or seemingly like the line turtle activating it, or being born with them activated in the case of benders. That's not confirmed, that's just my speculation on the chakras, because Korra, Juan and stuff like that, those episodes never touch on chakras really. But I think just the general idea of, say, when Mako was born, his fire chakra was active, and that's how he could bend fire, because his fire chakra was active, and that is, there's something special about that allows a bender to touch fire. What's unique about a bender compared to a non-bender is that even though both have chi paths, both have chi within them, only benders can access their chi and, I suppose, freely manipulate it. I think there to some extent there are non-benders out there who can use their chi for more spiritual means. The characters like I suppose Guru Patik, Hugh being enlightened and be able to use the banyan tree and stuff like that. There are non-benders who can to some extent use their chi to do some spiritual things, but in terms of bending, it is, I suppose, the art of directly manipulating your chi to use that as a way to channel through your element. Now, the missing link that we really don't know is how you go from, okay, I can manipulate my chi, to how manipulating your chi allows you to actually control an element. It's hard to really think about, but I suppose the general idea is that benders can make their chi kind of extend past their body and contact an element and have control over it in that way. And then as a bender trains, they become more adept at doing this, and so can control that element in a better way. And obviously, the more they manipulate their chi, the more energy they use, and eventually over time they get tired and can't bend for a while, which is how it works. Final couple of things on this would be mentioning the chi paths once again, and why the airbender tattoos are important to the avatar state. The reason an airbending avatar's tattoos glow while they're in the avatar state is because the tattoos are basically put over the lines of the chi paths throughout the body. But the tattoos are done with an ink that is somewhat spiritual and reacts to a large flow of chi. So obviously the avatar in the avatar state is basically the most powerful kind of human manipulation of chi. So there's a ton of chi just circling around an avatar's body, passing through the chakra points, and so that reacts with the ink that's part of the tattoo, and that's why an airbending avatar's tattoos glow. So that's really interesting. The other thing I'll say is with regards to Amon's ability to take people's bending away. That, and I suppose to some extent, the Lion Turtle giving Aang the ability to take bending away, but they are different abilities. The way Amon's ability works is that it is effectively the opposite of how healing works. Healing, which is a waterbending technique, of course, works by a waterbender further opening the chi paths of someone's body to increase the flow of chi and increase the healing rate, and that's how that works. Amon is kind of using the reverse of that. He's basically shutting down the chi paths, shutting down access to the various chakra pools, and using that as a way to block someone from being able to bend. That's why when he takes away Lightning Bolt Zolt's bending, you see he grabs Zolt while he's still generating lightning, and you can see that as he gradually closes his chi paths, as is the way the technique works, the lightning, which is a high energy technique, turns to fire, then the fire goes away, and eventually to nothing. And that obviously is the representation of Amon gradually closing his chi paths until it's blocked. Now, this is slightly different to a chi blocker, who obviously uses physical attacks on points on the person's body to temporarily block it, because obviously if you just like punch someone in the arm and block their chi path in their arm, that's only going to be there for a while until, you know, the bruise goes away or whatever. That's why Amon, like, using a technique to like literally squeeze shut the chakra network is a pretty big deal, and it's basically permanent as far as we know, because even Katara, who's a healer, I suppose to some extent couldn't see or couldn't fix the damage done by Amon's attack. That's how kind of powerful that technique is. The only way it was able to be fixed was with the Avatar's ability to I suppose fix that. And I suppose effectively that's just the Avatar, you know, fixing the chakra network. That seems to be a power of energy bending, to fix someone's chakra network. And as we saw before with the Lion Turtles, energy bending as a way to fundamentally alter someone's chi paths to give them the ability of bending in the first place. Now, the other point I want to make with Amon's technique is that the reason he, I suppose, was defeated in the end was that even though he had taken away Korra's ability to connect to earth, water, and fire, he never had any experience with ever chi block taking someone's bending away who had airbending. So he could obviously see to some extent while he was doing it was that Korra had never activated her air chakra, having never airbent before. And so he must have thought it was sealed in the first place, but I suppose the idea was that while Korra had the potential to airbend, she had never actually activated it before, and so he just assumed that he didn't need to do anything there. And so when Korra does finally unlock airbending, the fact that Amon hadn't sealed off like access to the air chakra was why Korra could bend in the first place, which is really interesting. So that's definitely something worth noting. I think just how that technique works and how there are bending techniques that relate to the chi paths, healing, and obviously Amon's ability as well. And how that somewhat relates to energy bending and how it obviously can give people bending, can take away bending, and obviously the taking away bending technique, I assume, is either it's just a very heavy-duty version of a Mons technique where it just completely shuts off someone's chi paths, access to their specific chakras, or, as is the speculation, potentially, it turns off the previously activated chakra that allowed them to bend in the first place. So, for instance, Aang taking away Ozai's bending. Ozai, I suppose, under my speculation and the way I see the chakras, is that, like, when he was born, his fire chakra was active, confirming that he indeed was a firebender. So Aang, what he does when he takes away Ozai's bending is he fundamentally alters Ozai's fire chakra so that he can't. It's no longer like active in the same way as it would be if he was a bender. It's hard to fully explain, but I think it sort of gives you a sense of how it works. It just cuts off access to it, or either a bender has something fundamentally different about their chakra related to their element. But that's about all I want to do in terms of general bending. And I suppose the way I'm going to go through each of the elements, I'll obviously within this video go through Earth, and then I'll do the other ones in later videos, is that I'm going to give you a general idea. I'm going to talk about the specific chakra for that element. I'm going to talk about the general philosophy of people of that element, and the general style of how they fight, what martial art their style is based on, the specific animal or celestial object that taught them the true ability, and then very specifically go in depth on the type of techniques people use for that element, the special techniques that people can use within that element, and so on. So that's the general format I'll use. Let's start off with earthbending. Earthbending, obviously, at least for me, is people who earthbend obviously have a very active earth chakra, and the earth chakra is located in the base of the spine. It deals with survival and is blocked by fear, and that I think definitely represents earthbenders quite well. They endure. They are defensive. They won't be knocked down. They never give up. That is the style. They will never be knocked down. That is the whole style of an earthbender. When they're confronted with a problem, they will stand their ground and won't be swayed. They are stubborn people. Survival is a big thing for them. But as we saw with Aang, when you are afraid to stand up to what is opposing you, you can't be a strong earthbender because you don't have that strong root, that strong connection to the ground, because you won't hold that ground. And stuff like the 600-day siege of Ba Sing Se represents the earthbender philosophy spirit very well. Being able to just defend and hold out and just have confidence in your defense for that long is very telling. And obviously, not every earthbender is the exact same, of course. Some of them have slightly different approaches and stuff like that. But fundamentally, that is the general philosophy of earthbending. Like, it's a very substantive element. It's primarily all about, big rocks, power, muscles, a little bit of like that. But I suppose the core of it is just that they survive. They won't be knocked down. They never give up. That's the key thing. So, people got the ability of earthbending from the earth line turtles. And this is where I'll make a point in like all of these videos. There is a difference between how people in general first got the ability to bend their element versus how people learned to bend their element in an efficient way using a martial art. So line turtles are responsible for giving humans the ability to bend, the ability to in any way manipulate their element, but it was people studying their surroundings, and in many cases for these elements, an animal or an object that taught them a style, a philosophy behind how to bend that element effectively. For Earth, it was first Oma and Shu who learned from the badger moles how to earthbend in a style that suited the technique. So that's the way, like, the style of earthbending comes from. And now the real world martial art that earthbending is based off is Hungar, which is a form of martial art. And you can sort of see that, it's got that kind of horse stance, the wide stance, with very strong stance that can't really be knocked over very well. And it's all about, holding your ground, creating a stable platform so that you can lift up these huge chunks of rocks and fling them at people, but at the same time have a huge, strong connection to the ground so you can be connected to your element. There are other styles, like Toph's is based off like praying mantis kung fu style, and hers is much more connected to the ground. Even when she moves when she's fighting, she tends to more slide her feet along the ground rather than take a step or something like that, because Toph, being blind, she probably represents the badger mole style, the way of the badger mole, more than any other earthbender out there, because she, like the badger moles, is blind herself, and so has to rely on her connection to the element to be effective in combat. So her style is very powerful, and that's where you bring in kind of King Boomy's style, which relates to Toph's style of the neutral Jing, where you wait and then strike. That's the whole style of earthbending that's very effective. You endure an attack, you put up a defense, take their attack, and then strike back while they're kind of overextended trying to break through your defenses. That's how an earthbender succeeds in combat. That's the general kind of form and stuff like that. Let's get into talking about the various techniques of earthbending. General earthbending obviously is focused on rock primarily. I think that's the best way to say it. Just the earth itself, rock, that sort of thing. Throwing boulders, chucking rocks, as kind of most people would say, is a simplistic way of describing them. But at the same time, powerful earthbenders, can create defensive walls with ease on a battlefield filled with earth, can create suits of armor out of earth, be creative when they need to be, and just be just simply being able to manipulate your environment to your advantage so effectively is very telling. Stuff like the Dai Li always wearing a glove of earth on their hands, which they can use to punch people with more effectively with it on their hands, throw it at people, and then manipulate it while it's in the air as handcuffs. Very clever things you can do with that. And obviously, earthbenders can bend various types of rock. They can bend crystals, as we see underneath Bossing Say, and various other types of rock. So it's a very versatile element and very strong style that, on land, I think earthbenders are unmatched. Obviously, the show tries to not overpower any element, but you definitely get the idea that if a group of earthbenders come at you, you can't really do a lot against them, because they can do anything. They can make the ground swallow you up, throw unspeakably large chunks of earth at you, and all this sort of stuff. It's very, very powerful. But it's not just earth that they can bend. Earthbenders can bend sand if they need to. Obviously, there's a whole group of earthbenders out there who kind of focus on this depending on their environments. Obviously, they are the sandbenders who live in the deserts. And, for characters like Toph, who really rely on her connection between her feet and the earth, sand was initially difficult for her because it wasn't solid. But she learned to just see it, I suppose, in a way as just flowing earth, that even though it's not as solid as you would expect, it is still earth. She can still bend it, and eventually she became so good at it that she could basically make art out of it, and is effectively a master sandbender as well. So that's really, really interesting. And obviously that the sandbending is definitely a style where it's kind of more like waterbending, because it's a kind of flowable kind of substance of sand. Now let's get into the more specialized techniques. And as I said, for most of these elements, not all of them, but at least the first three I'm going to cover, each one has a high-level technique that only very powerful benders of that element can learn. But if you are powerful enough and train hard enough, you can get it. There's no limitations on that. And then there's also a bloodline technique that you have to be born with the ability to use this technique. You can't just learn it. You specifically have to have the traits within you that allow you to learn this technique. So the talent-focused technique, the the high level one would be metal bending. Toph discovers this, of course, herself, and the reason it requires a high level earthbender to use metal bending is because it requires you to have an amazing connection to earth, to be able to see the earth impurities within metal and then bend a whole piece of metal just by bending those little impurities within the metal. That is why metal bending requires you to be a very powerful earthbender to use, but if you're good enough, you can do it. As kind of Toph, Suyin, and so on say, that it's there's no limit to an earthbender doing it, but obviously some earthbenders are better than others. Some will be able to do the technique, some won't. And metal bending, I suppose, it's similar in style to earthbending, but obviously it's a little bit different in that because the earthbender doesn't have complete direct control over every aspect of the metal because they're bending it through the impurities. So it requires them to be a bit more kind of rough with the metal. Like they really have to hit it a bunch of times to get it into the shape they want. Obviously, depending on the purity of the metal, they can do more or less with it. Earthbenders can't bend really pure metals like platinum, but they can bend most of the really common metals, and especially characters like Kuvira, who kind of seem to specialize in metal bending. They are very powerful with it, being able to use I suppose lighter, more kind of malleable metals, almost kind of like a water bending, where it's like almost liquid metal. Like you see them using it very effectively. And then I suppose especially kind of half metally, kind of half earthy stuff like bending meteorites is something that earthbenders use to practice with, because it's very easy to use. Metal bending is very, very interesting. It's a kind of more creative, I suppose, style of earthbending as well, because you can all of the stuff you can do with metal, and obviously with the police force they use the metal bending kind of spools of whips and stuff like that. So some very interesting stuff overall, and of course especially the Republic City Police Force, wearing metal armor and stuff like that. It's very cool. Other technique that is, I suppose, high level, but anyone can really learn it if they're good enough, is Toph's seismic sense. Again, Toph inventing the technique. And this one's really interesting because it's kind of like this really powerful technique. If you have this, you are so much more powerful as an earthbender, because it effectively gives you an additional sense, this seismic sense, the ability to see without your eyes. And so for Aang, who also has learned this technique, it gives him such a big advantage when Ozai tries to sneak up behind him and defeat him at the end. It's Aang using the seismic sense that kind of gets him the jump on Ozai in that scene. And it's just very powerful. And again, like metal bending, it requires more of the subtlety of earth bending rather than the power. And you have to be able to very, very specifically sense, the subtle vibrations through the earth to see what's in front of you with seismic sense. And it's effective. You can locate things all around the place. It gives you a probably wider field of vision than your own sight, and it's just deeply powerful. Lin uses it very effectively as a police officer. Aang uses it effectively in battle. Toph kind of requires it to be as strong as she is. So, really, really good technique there. But again, it's one that a lot of people can learn if they're good enough. But the technique that you have to be born with to use, you can't learn, is the bloodline ability of earthbending, which is lavabending. And only 2, potentially 3 characters we know in the entire universe have this technique. Ghazan, who's dead, Bolin, and a previous previous fire avatar seems to also have the technique. Now, these bloodline techniques, what are they? It's Sokka in K-109 Out of the Past, in the flashback during Yakon's trial, who explains to us this concept of special benders. Benders who are born with unique abilities that surpass the abilities of normal bending and are just beyond the imagination, basically. the lava bending is Earth's version of that. That only some people have it. It's super special. It's super powerful. And lava bending is probably the most like devastatingly powerful technique that we have. You know, it's similar, I think, in terms of destructive power to combustion bending, which I'll cover in the fire bending video. But the stuff that Ghazan especially does with this technique is so impressive. You know, like he's able to take down the walls of Ba Sing Se with it. He destroys a whole air temple with the technique, and basically has the advantage over everyone in the temple just with that technique. It is just so powerful. Like, you use this, and like it's kind of like firebending. You basically set off a fire that's just this flowing molten earth that if you don't stop it, it's just going to keep flowing wherever you want it and kind of causing issues. It's so powerful. And obviously the way Ghazan uses it in Bolin a little bit is that, like, obviously you can throw it around a little bit, kind of like water bending. You know, you can use it in similar ways to earth bending, but it's a bit more like malleable, but it's also so powerful. You can trap giant machines in it because it is more flowable. It's kind of like molten quicksand kind of stuff like that. But Ghazan uses it in a very offensive way, in that he kind of creates this kind of cutting disc out of a kind of shuriken cutting disc out of it, and you see just how, you know, like, strong it is. It's like you can melt through things with it. It's so powerful. And like, imagine hitting a human with this technique. You would just completely destroy them. It's so powerful. But yeah, there's a lot of speculation about, with all of these bloodline techniques, about why certain people are born with them, and is there any way to, like, in any way, like, maximize or like force someone to be born with this technique. The speculation around lava bending is primarily that it requires you to be an earthbender, but also potentially have some Fire Nation in your heritage. So obviously with Bolin, we know that family, and that, like, the parents were from the Fire Nation, and then the other parent was from the Earth Kingdom. So, like, hence why, like, his brother is a firebender, he's an earthbender, but Bolin also happens to be a lava bender. Like, what's up with that? It's hard to fully confirm whether or not that's the true, because we don't know about Ghazan's heritage. It does fit with that firebending avatar, though. You know, like, he has firebend. He's a fire avatar, but he has the earth special technique. So that's very, very interesting to me. So, like, that seems to make sense in that the theory kind of fits two of the three characters we know who have the technique. But it's hard to tell. It could just be random in that, like, it doesn't seem to fit personality-wise. Like, Ghazan, like, he's a very destructive character, so it fits him. But Bolin is a very peaceful character. Like, Bolin having such a devastating technique is almost this complete, like, funny thing that it's happened. Like, that one of the most likable characters in the show, who kind of doesn't like to hurt people, has such a powerful technique. It's very, very interesting. But yeah, that's the special technique of earthbending, which is, of course, lava bending. And, you know, it's something like when we get core comics in the next couple of months, I'm really interested to see what they do with Bolin, and the fact that he has such a powerful technique, in that, you know, his personality, you'd think, would lead him more into some sort of a peacekeeping, kind of charity work type role, but his powers would lead you to believe that, like, this guy could be a strong military commander. Like, you bring him onto the battlefield and it suddenly changes, because no one wants to deal with lava bender. But yeah, that's that. So yeah, I'm pretty much going to end it there. You know, there's probably other things I could really talk about with earthbending, but the main things I think I've covered here: just philosophy, the various techniques that are available, and I suppose some notable practitioners of earthbending. Toph, of course, Boomy, absolutely. And I suppose the main thing there is that you would consider Boomy to be the ultimate just earthbender, who doesn't use any of the special techniques like metal bending or anything like that. This guy who can do very powerful earthbending with just the muscles in his face. That is so powerful from him. He's strong, and he's managed to, like, endure in life for like 112 years plus. We haven't heard about his death yet, and he, even at this age, is able to match up against Toph, who's widely considered to be the most powerful earthbender in the world. And speaking of Toph, she absolutely is. her blindness kind of gives her an advantage as an earthbender. It gives her so much more of a connection to the earth. It allowed her to invent metal bending, basically invent seismic sense as a technique that earthbenders can use. And her unique style of earthbending allows her to very effectively combat large groups of people. She can obviously, crush, rocks into sand, kind of create a little bit of a sandstorm. People are at a disadvantage because they rely on their eyes, and she can just take them out in so many different ways: metal bending, actual earth bending, and so on. So absolutely interesting. And as well as that, even though she's blind, she still can see rocks in the air. I suppose that's a thing that with earthbending that's kind of hard to tell. And so with some of the other elements, it's the same. But it seems that to some extent, earthbenders can sense rocks that are not directly connected to them, that are off the ground. But I wouldn't say it's the most amazing sense or anything like that. But they can sense a rock coming towards them a little bit at the end. Other practitioners, of course, Bolin, who has a very pro-bending style of things. It's very quick. He's quick on his feet. He does quick moves combined with some acrobatics to be very powerful, but at the same time can do some of the bigger moves like walls and be defensive. And now, especially with his lava bending, he is a powerhouse if he learns to master it. The problem, though, is that the one person who could potentially teach him, Gazan, is dead, and how will Bolin master such a deadly technique on his own? Gazan, of course, is another example, but Kyoshi, as like a Earth avatar, absolutely really powerful character, one of the most imposing avatars of all time. She managed to separate Kyoshi Island herself using her earthbending, which is deeply impressive. Yeah, that's really about it, I think, for some of the most notable earthbenders. I don't want to go too in depth into the pantheon of characters that exist in the Avatar world, but I think I've more or less covered everything there is here. This video is going to be a little bit longer than the next like 3 or 4 videos are going to be on bending, because I wanted to cover bending overall generally, a kind of basic explanation of how it works, the chakras and stuff like that, and then also cover earthbending. So look forward to the next one sometime next week, which will be on waterbending, followed by one on firebending, followed by one on airbending, and I might do a separate one on energy bending. We'll see. I probably need to do a bit of research and just theorize myself on that before I record anything. But yeah, in the comments, continue to leave me suggestions for future Avatar Weekly discussion topic videos, and give me, obviously, comments, your own feedback on the stuff I've said in this video, if you like it or not, and so on. But yeah, other than that, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.